to another Fight and Night review. This for the Fight of the Night that took place last night at UFC on ESPN, Hall vs Strickland. Yes, I was looking at the title on Wikipedia, thank you. And it was not the main event, which I think a lot of people were expecting it to be, but the first fight on the main card between Bryan Bam Bam Barberena and Jason Witt. So as always, it is my occupation to try and remember what happened round by round, to try and break it down as best as I can, and tell you what I thought about the fight afterwards. So let's go. So we start with the round one, and to be honest, it takes a while for the action to get going. It is a minute and a half of mostly a feeling out process before Jason Witt finally lands a really good looking body kick, and then follows that up with a takedown. And he holds on to this for until about the 2-minute mark. I'm not really making a lot of this up, by the way. Bryan does sort of wall walk a little bit and manages to turn it into a position where Jason has Bryan's back. And Jason does sort of search for a rear naked choke. He isn't fully able to get in. He does get Bryan back on his back, but Bryan able to wall walk and able to start standing up. And then Bryan starts doing what he's really good at, which is throwing punches a lot and landing a majority of them. And he lands a lot on Jason Witt. But Witt eventually actually lands some really good counters of his own. He does stun Barberena with a really good shot before eventually taking him down again. Oh, I just thought of a moment, but then I think this moment happens in round two. But yeah, in round one, it is pretty one-sided in favour of Jason, if I'm being honest. Like, mostly because of the takedowns. If it were just a stand-up war, I think his counters would still be really good. Bryan mostly had the stand-up, but he was on the back foot for a lot of it. And even though he was landing quite well, especially near the end of the round, Jason's takedowns and ground control was just there for him. So I give round one to Jason. Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting first round, and it took a while to get going, but it does get better, I promise. So then we get to round two, and it immediately starts really well for Bryan. He's landing some really good shots, landing some amazing looping punches, lands a hell of a cross at some point. And he does manage to evade a takedown for a change. He was taken down quite heavily in round one. He's a bit better with his defense in round two. He's keeping his stance a bit lower as well, so he can like sort of see them coming in and defend them a bit better. But then there's a moment where he lands, where he has like Jason sort of against his sort of on the back foot, and he goes for a shot, and then Jason lands a counter right, and it's fucking go time from there. Like, Jason starts landing some really good shots, he follows up with that. There's a good moment where they're against the cage, and Bryan has Jason against the cage, and they both throw a really good... No, Bryan, excuse me, goes for a really good head kick, and they both throw a really good shot as well after that, which I think is the one I was just talking about. But after Bryan is knocked down, Jason goes for a guillotine, and it looks really goddamn tight. A lot of actions happen by this point in round two, by the way, but he's not able to fully sink it in. Bryan is able to keep calm and keep control, and eventually, you know, Jason does manage to get the takedown again, but round two, a lot more even. Bryan landed some amazing shots. He was clipped with a fair few as well. He was knocked down more than Jason was, which I think a lot of people were not expecting. I think people expected Bryan to get it a bit more. But it was still pretty exciting and back and forth. This is where it sort of felt more like a fight of the night. Still in favour of Jason though, not just for the takedown work, but his striking was actually pretty good too. And he knew that when he had Bryan hurt, he had to capitalise on that with good takedowns and the really good guillotine attempts. So, yeah, not really much else to say about round two, but quite a bit happened. I just wish I could remember more of it. We're going to move on to round three. And then we get to round three, and much like round one, it takes a while to get going, but again, when it starts, it really does. I think Jason starts with another pretty good takedown, but, no, he actually knocks Barberena down, if I remember correctly, and the two just keep going back and forth at it. Jason is landing fewer of his takedowns now, and Bryan knows he has to rally, but at this point he's landing a lot more shots. He's landing really, really good counters. There's a point where he starts chasing Jason around after landing a particularly hard right, and then just follows up, and each shot pretty much lands, but Jason is tanking it. He lands a really good counter with the body, and then the head punchy that he does, and just amazing work from both of these guys in round three, honestly. But, you know, Bryan starts pulling away with it, and Jason manages to get a really good counter, and he lands a vicious counter right that does knock down Bryan again. And he goes for a takedown, and Bryan sort of has like a guillotine, and it does look pretty good. It's a standing guillotine, so he doesn't jump up and have like the legs around the body to add more pressure. But Jason is able to keep himself calm, And once again, by this point, quite a lot has happened. Not enough that I can remember. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but Jason does get he keeps calm and gets a hell of a takedown. And about this 2 minute mark, and for a fair while, he does keep this takedown. And then we get probably one of the best last minutes and a halves, however the hell you say it, I think I've ever seen in the UFC. Bryan manages to escape the takedown. He starts landing some really good shots. Jason goes for another takedown, but he slightly slips it up. Bryan takes advantage, starts landing some really good punches while Jason is in sort of a sprawl position. He goes for another one, and then Bryan just repeats that. And then eventually Jason does manage to sink in another takedown and puts Bryan on his back again. Keeps control for the last few moments of the fight and has him in sort of like sprawl position, starts landing, and the bell sounds and the fight is over and we go to a decision. And the decision in question is a majority decision to Jason, and I have no problems with that as a call, and I don't have a lot of problems with this as a fight. I thought it was really good for a lot of moments, but it wasn't consistent enough, I don't think. Not as consistent as a couple of the previous fights have been, because yeah, while a couple of those were one-sided affairs, at least they felt like a much more consistent sort of thing. This one, not so much, and it was clear Jason was going to win just from his wrestling, but when he started striking with Bryan, I'm actually not the kind of guy that's like, oh, just keep it stand-up war, because I do like a bit of mixture in my mixed martial arts, but I think if this were a stand-up war purely, maybe Bryan would have won, but at the same time, it would have been a lot more entertaining and a bit more consistent as a fight, but it was still good as it is, so I'd recommend searching it out for yourself, especially for the comeback that Bryan tries to mount in round 3. And Jason, like, he put himself on the map with this one. He looked really, really good. And I don't disagree with the decision. I honestly think majority is a pretty good call. Because round 1 definitely goes to Jason. Round 2 narrowly goes to him. Round 3 could go either way, to be honest. But yeah, no problems with how this fight was scored. And just a fun one, so go look for it yourself. It's not going to be in my top 10, I don't think, but it is worth hunting down. So that will about do it for this Fight of the Night review. I know it wasn't again super in depth. I just wish the fight had more to talk about, but what I do get to talk about was still pretty good. So maybe find the fight for yourself. I still had a lot of fun with it. And also another thing that took my enjoyment out was that there was no goddamn fans. Or at least there are very few. I need fans again in like all events, not just the numbered ones. Anyway, next video you'll see me for won't be for a while, maybe another music of the week, but I will be uploading part of the Golden Path tournament starting tomorrow, and I'll probably be working on some attires ahead of time for Defy the Gods, because I really want to get those done fairly quick. So yeah, that'll be what I'll be doing for quite a fair chunk of my time. But I'll still be playing video games and so on. So now and also writing scripts for videos, because yeah, I sort of have to do that, otherwise I won't have anything to talk about. But yeah, the next video, assuming will probably be music of the week on Friday, then a random gaming stream on the same day, because I'm not going to be doing PBW versus ABW on Tuesday because of how much work it was to do the Golden Path tournament, even though that was a lot of fun. But that'll about do it. That's all I've got to say, really. So yeah, I'll see you in the next thing I wind up doing. As always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.